Hey everyone, I'm back again. This video is basically about how we can deal with issues of rejection before they come and they take root and make us feel like garbage. Now, it could be rejection or issues of self-worth or whatever it may be. So it's really something that I want to help the body of Christ if they're dealing with it, and then move slowly to healing for God to do His work. Um, so let me get to it. I looked online at the definition of rejection, and it says the spurning of a person's affections. Now, I'm hoping to be able to finish this video. I looked last, and my phone memory was at 76%. And I also have another video on here that I got to upload. So I'm hoping that I will be able to finish this video. So I don't want to rush, but I also want to be mindful of how much time I have to be able to speak. So in this video, I'm going to give examples in my own life of issues that of rejection that I have dealt with, issues that I perceived as what I thought was true, issues that I perceived that weren't true, that from other people that may have been causing rejection that wasn't their intention, and the issues of rejection that I perceived that I wasn't sure of. And then I want to be able to lead everyone into dealing with those issues of rejection and self-worth before the enemy gets to us. So, rejection is usually rooted from our experiences in life, what people have said, what people have done. It's what we perceived as true. So, in my own life, I perceived something as true, and so rejection came from it. Could have been something said by somebody, something somebody did that caused rejection. And then from that, I would get these feelings that I need to distance myself. I would become bitter, and the bitter would increase, and then there would be distance between me and another person. And that's what happens in the world, but in the body of Christ it should never be. Just because we perceive something does not necessarily mean that it's the truth, and I'll give into examples of that eventually. So I'm going to get to these examples of rejection in my own life, and when I give them, maybe you have your own issues that you've dealt with in your own life and what you want to deal with. And it can usually lead into forgiving the people. If you still have hurt from people in your life, then if you can go to them, work it out according to Matthew 18, and that way you won't have that distance between you and that other person. If they're no longer living, you can pretend as though that they're there, express your hurt to them, how they hurt you, then forgive them at the end of it, so that you could be free from this hurt yourself. So my first example was when I was a child. I was invited along with my family over to a cousin's house, and they had a pool. So I was over near the deep end, and I don't know whether I fell in or whatever it was, but I remember slowly sinking to the bottom, and I was trying to fight to stay above water, and I don't think I could, but I remember seeing my mother seeing that, and then she jumped in to save me. No one else did. She was the only one. And if I remember, I think my dad was drinking and getting drunk, and whether other people cared, I don't know. But that's what happened. My mother was the only one to save me. When I was a teenager, I was also invited to this cousin's house, and everyone got Christmas gifts, but I recall from my cousin getting gifts that were used. I was given a TV guide that was used, and I was also given a gift that was apparently used already. So that brought up issues of rejection. Another example, when I was younger as a kid, my sister didn't want me around. You know, an 18-year-old and however old I was, I wanted to be with my sister, but she was older, and it's understandable, but it didn't stop the issues of rejection from coming in because she didn't want me. As I got an older and a teenager, I wanted to hang out with her and she didn't want me. So that caused issues of rejection. Another example was my dad. My dad was not somebody that went out a lot. He didn't go out to places. He stayed at home. So my dad never went to my graduation. He never went to my ball games, save for one. And he never went to my music recitals. So that invoked rejection. And lastly, and I'm sure there are many others, but I'm just going to list these few down. I was hanging out with a good friend of mine. It was a few years back. And our other friends called him and said, "Hey, do you want to come over and hang out?" I didn't know if they knew whether I was with him, but he was invited. And so I felt the issue of rejection. I felt like nobody wanted me around. They liked him better than they liked me, and that's what I expressed to him. And so he said, "Oh, come on, man," letting me know that, that's not the truth, and that's not how these people are. So he said, "Why don't you just come?" And I was like, "No." And so I gave my reasons, and of course he gave that response. And so I was already wallowing in that rejection, and so I didn't want to just be around anyone. I wanted to be myself and sulk. So from each of these examples, it brought up the thoughts, no one cares about me. I'm not worth a gift, and I'm not worth spending time with or seeing. So these are what rejection does, and it helps you to feel those issues of rejection. And so then you start behaving from that. You start to think that no one wants you around, no one likes you, and you're not worth being around. Examples I'm going to give now are examples of issues that are not true, situations that were not true in my life in which caused rejection. Well, my wife and our two daughters went on a missions trip recently, and before I met my wife, she had two girls. And so I married her, and her two girls became my two girls. And so we've had a son since then, and just her and the two girls felt led to go down to Kentucky on a missions trip. And so I didn't feel led, so since I didn't go, I watched our son, because it would have been too hard for her to watch our son and to serve God at the same time, and to serve the people. It wouldn't have been easy, so I watched him for that entire week. One second. So, like I said, since before I married her, she had those two girls, so they were already a family together. So when they came back, I was hearing different things about how they wanted to go to Kentucky, and I was just seeing our daughter, like, the way she was acting, it was like I was excluded and our son was excluded. And I'm not talking about separation. It's not about issues of separation, but it was what I was feeling. So I felt excluded from their inner circle. And so I expressed that to my wife, and it was hard for her. It's hard for me to express when I'm feeling rejection, what I'm feeling, because I don't want people to diminish not only what I was feeling, but to say it wasn't true, or that I'm being ridiculous. So I expressed that to my wife, and so that was just an example of also um, a rejecting circumstance. Another example was a few years ago. Me and a few brothers that we planned on going to the Holocaust Museum in Washington, D.C. And, the plan was set up through email. My friend's dad, who I'm also friends with, that we go to church together, I never sent him an email because he didn't have an email. So I didn't think of asking him because it never came to mind, because it was only what it was under my email and the contacts under it. And so the day that we planned it, my friend was leaving his house and his dad asked him where he was going. And he said to the Holocaust Museum, and he asked who else was going. And it was me and another brother and a few other people. And so his dad got angry because he felt rejected because I didn't ask him. So my friend told me exactly what was going on, how his dad was acting. And so I called his dad up, and my friend as well. And I said, I'm sorry, man. I didn't know. I mean, I planned this through an email. And he gave off the ruse that he was okay, and he already had plans, which, I don't know if he did or not. But that's how I would have behaved if I was in that circumstance myself, because I would have felt like I'm not cared about. No one cares about me. No one wants me around. So I want them to hurt like I'm hurting. So that's exactly what he was feeling. Wasn't right, but I offered him the chance of going. And then I already stated this issue in another video, but I recall my friend getting asked to, well, I think I already stated that. Let me see. Yeah, I already stated that, so I don't need to say that too. But, when my friend was asked to go with my other friends to hang out, it was an issue that was not true that brought rejection. So, I'm going to lead now into not sure examples that brought rejection. I recall in my old church, me and another brother, we were writing a book together, and we came up with a promotional trailer for it. And so another brother in our church had a missions video that he created. We created a video ourselves, and we put it up on YouTube. Now, if anyone knows about the timeline in watching a video, you know when a video ends. But I shared it with a church leader, and at the beginning of our video, we have 3 examples that, lead into us talking about the video. And so this church leader that we sent the video to, in hopes that we would share it with the body to let everyone know what we were doing, that we were writing a book together, they watched the video and they thought it was done after the 3rd example. Now, if you know anything about YouTube videos, you know when a video is done. Well, it wasn't done after the 3rd example, because we went to talk about the book, and then I put bloopers on at the end of how we screwed up making the video. So we just felt rejected because this brother here was sharing his missions video, and they didn't even want to put our video up, something that we were proud of. So I don't know their intent or what they were feeling toward us or whatever it was, but we perceived it as rejection, that this brother was better than us. So you get examples like that. And then also, we got a message from this same leader that they wanted to meet with us to talk about the book, and it really came to nothing. And so we saw that from a rejecting standpoint. Like I said, our perception does not necessarily dictate truth. So we got to watch our perceptions. Now I'm going to lead into examples of what it stated as rejection sensitive dysphoria, and it deals with the perception of a circumstance. Now it says dysphoria is an extreme emotional sensitivity and emotional pain triggered by the perception, not necessarily the reality, that a person has been rejected, teased, or criticized by important people in their life. And that's from attitudemag.com. Now, what are the effects of it? The effects are someone that gets angry and have an emotional outburst when they feel like someone has hurt or rejected them. They set high standards for themselves they often can't meet, and they have low self-esteem and feel anxious, especially in social settings. And that's from WebMD. Now, I want to lead into dealing with the rejection before you start feeling it. If you face a potentially rejected circumstance in which you would feel from that, then the enemy will come in. Then my advice is stop right there. Are there possible other explanations of the circumstance in which somebody said or did something? Or, like you've seen my examples in the past, what were the other possible examples? There may be other examples, and it says in Scripture that we need to think the good of somebody. So, can you think of the good of something or someone in your example to where you're not going to feel rejection? Another way to deal with it, if you're feeling a possible rejecting issue, go to the person and say how you're feeling and if it's true. That way So go to the person and say how you're feeling, and they can tell you whether or not it's true. That way you can keep yourself from even attempting to walk in rejection, even entertaining those rejecting thoughts. And, if you're focused on your rejection and your pain, then you can't see, God at all. So, I really want to express that to you. Go to the person. That way you won't have to deal with any kind of feeling of rejection. And even if you do feel like a potential rejection, you can clear it easily by thinking of the good of somebody, thinking the good of a situation, or possibly going to the person themselves and finding that out. Like I said, think the good, and if you have any rejecting thoughts that you would naturally think, all it takes is one thought, and then the enemy jumps on it and puts other thoughts in the place. I'll get to that eventually, an example that I have. But, you want to change the thoughts. If, for example, let's see, what did I give? 1 second. Like the example of, my friend getting asked by my other friends to come over and hang out. Well, if I would have thought, instead of, well, they like him more than me, first of all, I had to stop that. If I would have thought, well, they didn't know I was here, number one. Number two, knowing each of their characters, they're not like that. So that would have been another thing to counter those rejecting thoughts. So if I would have used that, if I would have used those truths, it would have combated those feelings of rejection. So you have a choice. You can either succumb to those feelings of rejection, or you can fight them. Like I said, do this before the enemy comes in with his negative thoughts and lies. Because once you get a hold of that lie, the enemy's going to come in further and make you feel worse. Such as this example I'm about to give. One year, I think it was back in 2007, and my friends set up a party for me and another friend who shared the same birthday as me. Well, they were trying to think of a way to get both of us to come to the party, so that they could be so that we could be celebrated. Well, the way they did it was potentially rejecting. This would be under. Now, it worked under all these areas apparently. It was a not sure example. It was a not true example. And it was a perception that I had that was not right. And I was working through all three of them. As I'll be getting to it, they sent me an email saying, Rob, come to such and such party. Well, the first thought I had was, well, don't they know it's my birthday too? And then the second thought, I let the enemy come in, and he said, they don't care about you. They forgot all about you. You don't mean anything to them. So I took that first lie and I believed it. So then that gave the enemy the license to speak even further lies. So the more I started accepting and agreeing with those lies, the worse I started feeling. And that's what the enemy wanted. If my eyes are off of God and onto the issue, then he can create separation between me and my friends and put a wedge in between them. So I got to the point to where I started thinking really bad, negative thoughts, and I was like, I'm not going. And so, I mean, you heard this in another video if you've been watching my videos, but so this lady from church told me, said, you need to go because they're celebrating your birthday too. And so I felt like garbage, man. As soon as I got there, I looked at the cake and it had both our names on it. They didn't add me at the last minute. They had me in mind. And I found out, they said to my other friend, come to Rob's party. And just to see my other friend there celebrating my birthday with the intention, the good intention of celebrating me, whether they felt those thoughts or not, but they fought them if they did. But just to see my friend there celebrating my party made me feel even worse, because here they came to celebrate me, and I'd even do the same for them. So that's, my perception was wrong. I thought that they didn't care about me, and it wasn't true. So, you know, maybe you're dealing with the same things with rejection, and you're in a process with God, and you have the choice of yielding to God's process, which means that you can follow my tips, and tips God gives you and other people to deal with any kind of rejecting thoughts. So, the first thing you need to know is that you are God's child. You are a king like Jesus. You're his brother. We're co-heirs with Christ. And whatever is Jesus's is yours and mine. So know you are God's son and daughter, and that he loves you. So I'm going to end it here. And I pray this video has blessed you. And, let's move together and, building love for one another, letting nothing come between us. And, let's just further the kingdom by celebrating other people and help helping them to be set free. So thanks for watching, and God bless you.